I have here with me Ilse Wachtelaar and Bob van Kleemputte from the CREATE.eu agencies that are based in Ghent in Belgium, so not too far from where I am today. Ilse, I know you're not alone today, so just explain how you and Bob are going to be working during this session.
Well, I'm going to give the presentation now. I'm going to explain a lot, and then at the end of the session we have a short Q&A, of which Bob also comes on stage to help answer some questions.
Yes,
Super.
especially technical questions. I will help out and answer them all.
Super. Good. Glad to hear it. I read on your website that you used the latest multimedia technology to create stunning experiences and bring stories to life. And so I'm going to stop talking and leave you to it. The stage is yours.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Welcome. Thank you for being here. And nice to meet you all. Nice to meet you digitally. I'm Ilse Wachtelaar, Communications Manager of CREATE.eu, and I'm very passionate about creative technology, cultural experiences, and it always makes me happy to see young people enjoying a museum or science center exhibition. Although they were very critical to go in the first time, at first, and mostly their enthusiasm grows because of the interactivity of an exhibition. So I'm having a great time working at CREATE.eu, which is a multimedia company and creative studio that develops highly technology interactives to bring information to life. And the aim mostly is to reach a wide audience to help them dive in the content of the museum or science center. So first, I will give you a short overview of who we are, how we work. And after that, we move quickly to a new concept that we recently developed because we received some questions about it. And it's all about plunging visitors totally in an exhibition, in several exhibitions, with which they can interact with. And it's also modular, a modular system, and still COVID-19 proof. If you have any feedback on this concept, please use a chat box at the right, or use a question button beneath, so we can come back to you at the end of the session with a lot of answers normally. So we develop several multimedia content like augmented reality, virtual reality, serious games, impressive interactive projection mappings, and we provide the hardware installation as well. So that makes us a unique mix of storytellers, 2D, 3D animation designers, content developers, and hardware engineers. And we work in two departments. CREATE Studio, they provide all the software development, and CREATE Systems, they provide all the IT system designs and the hardware integration. We are based in Belgium in a fully equipped infrastructure that enables us to create all these immersive and all these unique experiences. So now you know a lot about us, and I now will move to the question that we recently got frequently by museums and science centers to create immersive experiences in which the visitor truly enters a new world, a world in which the visitors can see, feel, hear, and even smell the content, and on the other hand, if necessary, can still keep a social distancing. What's immersion? We like to explain it as being a part of a new world, being in the middle of an experience. It can be, for example, listening to good music play and dream away. But here we are talking about being in the middle of a projection that can be on several walls. Preferably, we are talking about a 360-degree projection, including the floor, even the ceiling, maybe, that the visitor become a part of. You already see some examples here made by TeamLab and Super Bien. Also here some other examples of Atelier des Lumières, Moment Factory, TeamLab, and all of them, or pretty impressive, and typical is that some of them, they are set up only temporary, while others, they do contain content, but it's not explained during the experience. You see and feel a theme, but but you don't read a comprehensive explanation. And then again, in others, it's about abstract content to create emotions. Here's some examples of our own, in which we also show abstract content, while in others we use the immersive technology to share art or science information. And by sharing, I mean we add a voiceover that explains and narrates while the visitors admire the animations. On the next slide, I will show you a short movie of one of those experiences. It's called Lights on Van Eyck. You can watch the video using the button beneath, because then you hear the audio also. So if you all enjoyed the video, normally you are still in the crowdcast, you can see this image again. Yes, okay. So now what we did is make these immersive experiences interactive and modular. What you see here is a 360-degree projection, including the floor, that plays a customized interactive show. And the theme is preferably about a real life, but an unattainable world. And it's interactive, so that means that the whole group can influence the room at the same time. It's also a modular concept, so the content can be changed anytime to present new exhibitions. And also the square meters can differ. It's not necessary that every space, every setup has the same measurements. I come back to that later. The aim here is that the visitor enters an unreachable world, so one he has never been in before and is very unlikely to be in the near future. And this can be about, for example, what you see here is the deep ocean, the underwater world. It can be about a journey through galaxy, an era in history, extincted animals. And besides watching and being fascinated by these impressive projections, I like to repeat again that the visitor can interact with them. Here you see some examples of what that is, what I mean by interactive projections. These are inspirations for us, made by TeamLab and Superbien Studio, a studio based in Paris. So what happens here is that with those interactive projections, we create a new 3D world, real time, in the Unreal Engine, in which the visitor can interact with the walls, the floor, even objects maybe in the room. And this happens by camera tracking and body movement. So it's not really necessary to touching if that isn't possible because of the COVID-19 precautions. What we created so far already is that, for example, children, they can chase fish, and when they catch them, they several trivia appear. They read content, or they see their footsteps in the sand, and then they read a little note on how the sand has been there for ages already. Or at other places, visitors, they suddenly see that they can shake shells, and then other useful trivia appear. And this all to create a first impression and fascination, because then the story begins. You'll see a countdown projected on one wall, and once that ends, a story based on scientific facts, other information, it begins. The aim here is to give context about the theme that we already interacted with the introduction before. For example, there is a voiceover that takes you on a fascinating journey through the universe, on a ride to Mars. And on the road, you pass planets and learn about them and the technologies used to study them. Once landed, you'll see your footsteps in the red sand of Mars. And then the narrator asks you to collect as many minerals as possible before leaving again. And before the takeoff, he also asks if who will stay to study Mars, for example, and who will lounge. And the signs will appear on the floor, projected on the floor, so visitors can take position, can choose by taking position on that projection, on those projections on the floor. So you hear here that the story can be linear and interactive. This means we can listen to a story while admiring the projections, and in the story, that this could be, when we go back to the theme of the underwater world, this could be the creatures of the deep ocean that tell about their lives, why they lived, how they survived, and how some of them didn't. That's a linear story. But then there's also the possibility that visitors are asked something, are asked to reflect and to interact with the projections. And then the story will only continue when the interaction ends. And this is measured by the camera tracking, of course. So I hope it's clear that we don't only want the visitors to be astonished by the impressive projections, but that they also learn about the context and withhold facts and figures when they leave. The content is also brought in layers, so it should be an experience for a wide audience of any age. And now I like to emphasize that, that this is a modular system. So many exhibitions are possible in the same room. We can change the content, or the Museum Science Center can change the content at any time. The setup remains the same, but the interactive and the same amount of interactives with the same storyboard and so on. But the whole content and the whole look and feel can change. We are very glad that we already received the feedback and confirmation that this is an impressive approach to communicate content in a playful and yet valuable way. It's also possible to combine this interactive world and story with in-depth interactives in the same space. For example, a multiplayer table or an interactive quiz, where a group could answer questions. And so, for example, when there is a theme of the climate change, there could be a situation projected on one wall that says that there is a city about to flood. And then by answering questions, right or wrong, by a whole group or just some individuals, all together you can save the city. How does this work? There are answers given, and they are given in several colored floor tiles, again projected on the floor. The people take position, and then by working together they save the city. Or you can also read the facts and figures projected on another wall, and with which you can interact by using a game console, a big wheel, for example. Or when this should be touchless, again, it's also possible by the body movement. Here you see a floor plan of that combination of the interactive world and story and the in-depth interactives. And here you see that everything has the same look and feel, the same animated background and so on. So when there is a new exhibition and the content changes, it's the whole look and feel will change also. So the content management system adapts to new content very quickly on every projected surface and on every interface and so on. The feedback we received so far is although there's less touching, there's more interactivity. And a 360-degree projection makes it possible to have a lot to look at the same time, which is pretty new, and of course also the immersive audio is very important because it really plunges the visitors in this new world. We also heard that because there is enough to do as a group experience, the visitors don't need to worry about waiting to discover more details on an individual device, on a little screen, for example. We really believe that this kind of experience achieves the goal to reach a very diverse audience, and also that persons of several ages and interests can be inspired and learn more in the same environment at the same time without having to wait for each other. And then, taking into account the COVID-19 precautions, the visitors can keep the social distancing within the group experience. And of course, it's also possible to have a VR experience of this immersive space because it's already made. I mean, a VR experience at home, as several museums did the past months during COVID-19. So please note that you don't need any large measurements to get this installed. It's also possible, for example, it's also possible as an individual experience in just a one-person room. Now, how do we create this? First of all, we create a storyline and the first visuals, always based on research and scientific facts, together with an expert group. And then a scenario writer writes the story to make it attractive for both adults and children. We design animations and the interactivity in the Unreal Engine. And of course, we test a lot with an audience to see how they interact, if every interaction attracts their attention enough, and so on. For the installation, we create a 3D model of the space in which we test everything, and we create a VR preview. And then based on the pixel map, we make sure that the video mapping fits exactly the measurements of the room. Here you see another example of a concept ID for an exhibition about artificial intelligence. It's possible for us to establish various of these modular immersive spaces in several museums and science centers worldwide. So if one show is created for one location, it is possible to exchange it with the other one. And it's important to know that content can be made by anyone, by any studio. For example, for the non-interactive content, this can be created according to the pixel map that we deliver, and then the content management system formats the show in the right proportions so it fits exactly the room. The projectors with the auto-calibration, they will do the rest. And then for the interactive content, we deliver the Unreal Engine template and documentation, of course, on all the sensors and camera tracking and interaction tracking system. Even events can take place here. In the CMS, you choose a layout and background visuals, but also a full immersive presentation can be shown here using the templates I just explained. And we make sure that there is a detailed and clear IT reader that explains how this setup works, that it's made user-friendly for any employee of the museum and science center. And we also give it training, of course. So now I would like to end with some other examples besides this immersive modular space. Just a few because in the 15 years of experience that we have, we of course created some other interactives, and besides and before Corona, we always believed that generating information, it's important to generate information that can be read by a small or a big group, a family. So here you have, although there's maybe one individual that handles the device or the interface. So here, for example, you see one person choosing a location on a map. It's Antwerp, a city in Belgium. And then he chooses an age. It can be in the present, can be in history or in the future. And then the images and a map of that period, they appear. But the whole family, the whole group, they can see those images on the big screens you see over there, also on the map. And several points by projection are enlightened that are connected on the glass scale model that you see there, and they are connected to the content that was just selected. Also, this information is connected through the CMS with the database of the city. So it's updated daily. Or we can also use our own device. Now I'm talking about some more corona-proof possibilities. We can all use our own device during a visit, which will be disinfected at the end of the visit. Here you see an example of a cartoon museum. Or here you have an example of an augmented reality experience in which every visitor receives a tablet at the beginning, which is also disinfected at the end of the experience. What happens here is that when the visitor screens one object or painting, receives extra information, anecdotes, and he can choose which ones he wants to read, and others maybe he just skips. Or there can be one game console here. This is a setup in Technopolis. It's a manually of game, and a whole group can watch what happens. In fact, this can be played by 2 persons. And this game console is called a zapper. It zaps objects that fly through the galaxy, and once they are hit, they just explode into several elements that are connected to the table of Mendeleev. Was in the year of chemistry last year, and then the whole group can experience this. This is just one projection on one wall, but this can also be an immersive projection, of immersive experience also. And then we have the interactive projections. As you already saw in the immersive modular space, it's the same system of camera tracking and body movement. And to end here, we have our immersive art experiences. On which the immersive modular interactive space is based, of course. And we are very pleased that we are already recognized by several art experts that this is an impressive experience that helps a young audience to get familiar with the Renaissance and medieval art. First, this could be for an audience that first weren't very enthusiastic to go to a museum or to experience art, but by visiting this, they get inspired. You saw Beyond Bruegel here. This is a traveling exhibition that I also will explain in the afternoon. And here you see Lights on Van Eyck, an immersive experience about another Flemish master that opens next week in Belgium. And well, yeah, here you also can admire all the paintings of Van Eyck in half an hour with a strong audio immersive experience added to it. So I think we have a lot more examples to give you to inspire you, but I will just end with one short movie in which you see some other projects, and then we come back to you for a short Q&A. So thank you. It was nice to meet you all. Hope you enjoyed it. And now I would like to invite Bob to the stage.
For your very nice presentation. So if there's any questions, feel free to ask them. I can help out with some technical answers.
Did you receive any questions? Could we?
I see them here. I've got one. How much
Okay.
is it? Such an interactive product, Christelle. It really depends on the size. So what we do is, so our product is modular, so it really depends on the size of the room and the number of projectors. That's one, which has a very big impact, a parameter, but also the creation of the show, of course, how far you want to go into the show. But that's why we think it's interesting. We see a lot of demand for this across Europe, across the world, and science centers for these kinds of solutions. So that's why it would be interesting if we can, if our modular product can be installed and people use the same kind of dimensions in the spaces, then we can share content as well. So that's why we propose the modular product. So the shows can be shared between science centers, and not everybody has to do its own production from scratch. Yes, that's the advantage. Then the second question: does the room have to be dark for the first type of immersive experience? The answer is yes. There's no natural daylight. No. It needs to be completely dark. And that's always the case in any kind of projection environment. Yeah, if you have natural light, it will not work. So you need to completely darken. How much time can a new exhibition or any content be shown in full 360 projection in the room? Can you explain a bit more how this works technically? Well, in general, we do our shows about 10 minutes, 10 to 15 in the linear shows, which are more storytelling. And then we have an environment which is what we call the free world, where visitors can interact with objects and play around free. And normally we do 15 minutes free world and then countdown and then a more storytelling show. And then again, the free world experience. You said that you work in the project since the very beginning, since the storytelling, but is it possible to commission your project where the storytelling and the conceptual script is made by the museum team? And other question, you don't have any shadows made by the visitors, for example. My experience said that this is a very common problem. How do you achieve that? So I'll start with the first one. Yes, we work in any kind of way. We can also do the hardware installation and work with somebody else for the content. But on our system to work, that's why we provide the people with templates, either linear templates to work in After Effects or any other program where you can make some video content, or in Unreal Engine or Unity, where you have more like game engines to create your content, which can then be interactive with the interaction systems we install in the space. So we're definitely open to work with others where the storytelling is done and this conceptual script is made by the museum team. We always work together with expert groups anyway to advise us on that. And then the shadows, the amount of shadow really depends on the projectors you use. Our projectors use very short lenses, which mean they can be very close to the walls. So you don't have a lot of shadow on the wall itself, only when you go really close to it. And then the shadows on the floor, it's the same. It's actually when you, because you have overlap from the projector, that most areas are actually projected from one projector. If one projector creates a shadow, the other one takes over. And if you have shadow on the floor, it's not really that much of a problem we experience. If your content is dynamic and fluent, people don't really notice it. We haven't had any remarks on that so far in our experience. How would you ensure such an experience is accessible, visually impaired, for example? So for the visually impaired, our show has voiceover support. So this means that you can have most of the stories have an actual audio team where a voiceover explains the theme. So we have that. Also, the projections are very, very large. So for people who have a smaller visual handicap, can definitely still see it because it's a very big experience. And then there's the and we can also connect hearing loops or other aid devices to help people And then you have to make sure that, of course, it's accessible. It's completely flat, so people in wheelchairs and others can also access it. Then you mentioned that you see the possibility for science centers and museums to partner up and co-create this immersive space. Can you explain how this would work? Yeah, so the problem we saw with immersive spaces around Europe is that everybody seems to be doing their own thing on their own size, and that means that everything has to be custom created for that own size. And that's why we created this modular product where we use the same dimensions, and we actually, so we have cubes of a certain dimension, and we can make puzzles with them. And if we stay within those same formats, then we can share shows between science centers. So it's no need, for example, a space like Atelier des Lumières is a very special place, but it's very custom. There's no other place like it. It has very special shapes, which make the projection interesting as well. But this means that the content from there needs to be completely reworked if you want to use it somewhere else. So by creating this modular product, we can just put it in the market, and if we use the same dimensions, then we can share the shows between science centers. So everybody just has the hardware set up, and they can share the content shows. That's where we see the possibility, and we're open to look for partners in Europe to co-create this kind of setup. And then we also supply the template, so other studios can also make shows for this kind of setup. Yes. And then would this work in a dome environment? It could, but then it would be a different kind of creation. But it's actually the same technology, but in a dome environment, it's harder to create the interaction with the audience. Yeah. These are some of the questions. If you have some
I think you've got them all now.
Yeah. Yeah, I was going a bit fast because of the timing.
I'm impressed, Bob. That question answering was perfectly timed. Well done.
Yeah, I was in a hurry. I thought the timer was kind of rushing me a little bit, so I just went through.
No, it was really impressive. I'm sure the audience is really pleased that you managed to get through them all. That was fantastic. And also, I think I'm going to plan a trip to Ghent to go and visit the Van Eyck exhibition.
Yeah, definitely, sure.
Let us know.
On the 26th of June.
Will do. Thank you so much, guys. Yeah, that was a really, really good session. Thanks very much.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Bye.